statute, and they said,
Nice.
why? Well, that was a good enough answer.
Okay,
You would think.
Yes.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order here.
That's not tonight. That's not this meeting. That is,
Yeah, that is ours.
This is our meeting.
That's ours.
Sorry, this is this meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry,
This
I'm
is
sorry, it
meeting.
is.
We're in
Sorry.
public safety now.
Sorry,
We've
I'm sorry.
moved forward. Okay. All right, Kevin, there you are. Come on up.
Yeah, we'll make this fast. I gotta run to the Heritage meeting in a couple minutes. First, I'll do the CAC, the Conservation Advisory Council. I was just informed by Julie Noble that the open space plan is now completed and it's been delivered, and that the mayor is reviewing it. And I think the CAC will be reviewing it next week, and will consider adopting it and recommending it, or not, to the Common Council. Most likely we will recommend it, but we'll wait for a determination by the board on that. So that's the big news over there. The other discussions we just had over at the Climate Smart Commission, one of them, I think, another speaker may be going to speak on this later, had to do with the dance camera plant. I believe the mayor has sent a letter on that already. We had considered making a recommendation at the Climate Smart Commission, but since he's already made made that recommendation, and another speaker may make the same recommendation, we'll let that, I'll skip that for the moment. And the last thing that we had Nick Savota from the formerly on our Climate Smart Commission, now with the County Department of the Environment, do a rollout on Bring Your Own Bag. Right, so, yeah, it's supposed to go online July 15th, but there won't be any penalties, I don't think, until next year sometime. The state is doing a similar law that comes online in March of 2020, so I think any type of enforcement or something, that's gonna be later. So there'll be an interim period to sort out any problems with it, but, yeah, I'm gonna carry my bag around with me now and, make sure I'm in compliance. So I think that covers it, unless anybody has any questions as to.
Anybody?
No.
Okay. Man, that was quick. All right, thanks, Kevin.
Okay, well, we'll catch you next month. Oh, you are here next month? The 24th?
As far as I know.
We're here every
I
time.
haven't heard that we're not.
Okay.
Unless those clouds take
Yeah,
us away.
yeah, of course, the building is blown away. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yikes.
Okay, first order of business. We have a request to remove the handicap sign from 193 Clinton Avenue.
Motion.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We'll keep that together there, thank you. Okay, second
So we're signing on top.
is the handicap parking on Van Dusen.
Just keeps coming around and around and
We're going
around.
on top now.
Oh my God.
All right,
Wasn't this done already?
all right.
Yes and no.
So who
Signing on top.
has the most understanding of this problem here?
No.
This has been an ongoing issue. So the resident requested that handicap signs go up. We thought that they could. They went up there. I think they tried to do it, but then they came back and said they couldn't do it because you can't. It's a no parking road. You know anything about this?
Well, I went down there today to look at this, and there are cars parked legally on both sides of the street.
On Van Dusen?
Yeah, the only signs on there is you can't park, they're snow-related signs. On even days, you can't park here on a snow day, and odd day, you can't park here, but
On the regular days, there's cars parked on both sides of the
Free
street.
parking, and I don't understand what the, plus the fact I couldn't really find 38 Van Dusen Street.
All right, so we previously made a motion
Yeah.
and passed a resolution to put that handicap sign there.
Right, the question was which side of the street it was gonna go on, and it looks like it doesn't matter.
You know, on either side, how do you get familiar with this at all?
Is this where the address was wrong?
Right, it was, and then we changed it to the correct
We
address.
amended
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
And a resolution was issued?
Yes.
yeah.
A resolution was issued, yes. And
Now-
then we got a memo from Diane saying that we have to do an amended resolution because there's no parking on one side of the street, but I don't see that up there.
I don't either.
I'm not sure, I don't know what she's talking about.
Okay, I'm not really sure on that either.
No, like I said, I went down there, parked on
There
both
is
sides.
opposite side of street parking regulations there for the snow emergencies and that's
That's
about it.
it,
it,
that's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Although
there's
the-
no signs along there.
So is there anything we have to do that can be placed there, right?
I would assume so, yeah.
Well, unless, was Diane looking at the code to see that it says
Yeah.
no parking along there?
I'm looking at the code now, just because there are no signs doesn't mean there isn't something in the code.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and just because people park there doesn't mean they're parking legally. So you gotta look at the schedule in the code to see if there's a restriction there that is not specifically posted. So, I'm looking for that now. If you wanna come back to this, I'll find it while you're moving on to something else. What's it being used?
Okay. We will come back to this.
Uh-huh.
At 38?
That might be one just for the snow emergency.
Any more discussion of that?
Well, this is that down here?
35, isn't that, am I looking at the wrong address? There's one house down this way.
Yeah, that was this house.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at, okay, I was looking across the street.
So what, if it is in the code that there is no parking there, what does that mean for the handicap parking signs? Does that mean we can't put it up there?
I think that ties into the discussion that, you know, Andrea is gonna be, bringing up in a bit. You know, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I can't tell you whether and why, there wouldn't be parking on one side of the street, and what impact putting one handicap spot in the middle of the no parking side of the street would have on traffic. And that would be something.
I mean, other than the narrowness possibly of the street, if there is a handicap parking on one side and all the other cars have moved to the opposite side, the congestion issue, we're trying to get the plows through at some point, because that's kind of what we're up against now. If people don't move their cars from one side to the other, we go through there to plow, we can't actually get the plows through because it's too narrow.
Right, and it's just a little short, it's not a long street.
Right, but with still, if you have cars on both sides and they don't move, like one side doesn't move when they're supposed to, and this happens constantly there, we can't get the plows through, there's not enough room to get the 11
So-
foot wide plow through.
Because actually, I don't see, Van Duzen is right around the corner from me. I don't see, I didn't see any no parking signs there, but I don't see a lot of cars parked on both sides of the street either.
Right.
Because a lot of the parking, the houses are on Van Buren Street. And so the back of the houses are on Van Duzen. And if they
Right.
don't have a yard or a driveway, they're usually in the front. The front is more congested than the back is.
Okay, I'm just going by what I witnessed and went through with the snow emergency stuff, because the people, let's say everybody's supposed to be moving their cars,
It's
and
hard for the plows to get through, right?
4 or 5 cars don't move, we can't get through. And that's, this past year, we were actually towing cars from that area.
Is that a problem for garbage pickup also?
It is, it just, yeah, during the winter, during the snow, 'cause this winter, we actually kept the garbage trucks going, even though this year, you know, as we're plowing as well, to get the trash pickup.
So there is a no parking sign, at least there was at some point, in front of 38, because Jeffrey found it, I see it. So,
So I didn't see it.
I mean, maybe, who knows how old this picture is?
Okay, it is in the code, what it says, no parking or standing at any time on Van Dusen North from Delmont Street to Broadway, because it's on the original.
It's that little street that's right off of Van
So
Dusen.
what it says is no parking or standing any time on Van Dusen Street North from Delmont to Broadway, and Van Dusen South for the entire length. So that's what's in the code, whether there are signs there or not, and whether people park there or not.
So then technically, the person would be able to get a handicap parking sign.
Unless you
See what I
amend,
can see what we can find.
unless you amend, are you talking about on the north side or the south side?
35, whatever, wherever.
I guess you would have to amend the charter, correct?
No, that's it, no. You'd have to amend the schedule, the no parking schedule, okay, that is part of the code, to address it, but, again, I don't know whether including a handicap spot in the middle of a block that is already designated as a no parking, zone for the entire length, is something that is gonna have, impact on traffic that the engineer would recommend against for some reason or another.
And 35 is the south,
What's that?
south side.
Okay, so yeah, south side of Van Dusen, there is no parking or standing at any time. The entire length.
But people are parked there.
So they're disregarding
Well,
the
there's
code.
Yeah, well, but there's no way they can know that.
So there are no parking anytime
Right.
signs.
If someone drives up there, they don't know that.
Which,
The lack of the sign is
Getting
not a
tickets
defense
somewhere?
of a parking ticket, okay? The lack
Well,
of
it should
signs-
be, because if I
But
don't know
legally
that I
it's
can't
not-
park there,
legally
why
it's not.
wouldn't I
You can't
be?
go around the whole city putting signs up everywhere on every street at every address. I mean, we go through this in city court every time we have parking court where the judge specifically instructs people that the lack of a sign is not a defense. Okay, you can certainly ask, DPW to put up signs in particular places, and that's something between you and the department. Okay, but technically, there's no requirement that signs be put up to reflect every, restriction that is in the code.
So what does Diane mean when she says that an amended resolution to 35 Van Dusen across from the address listed needs to be done? She says, her note is, there's still a problem with placing handicap parking at 38 Van Dusen Street residents. There is no parking on that side of the road. It would have to be changed by an amended resolution to 35 Van Dusen across from the address listed in the attached resolution.
I think what she is saying, and she's not here to speak for herself, is that while you can't put it on the south side, you
Put
can
it on,
possibly put it on the north side as long as it's not between Delmont to Broadway.
That is between Delmont and Broadway.
You have to put it a block away, basically.
Why could it not be between Delmont and Broadway?
What's that?
Why can it not be between Delmont and Broadway on the
Well,
north
because
side?
the code says north from Delmont to Broadway is no parking or standing, and south, the entire length of Van Dusen is no parking or standing.
All right, so basically, there's no parking on that entire stretch of Van Dusen.
According to the schedule 14 in 390-97, yes.
So what are the options for Rita to bring back to her constituent with this? I mean, amend the code so that they would change the no parking first and then get up a handicap sign? Should talk to the engineering department?
I would
like-
talk to the engineering department and DPW and the police department with regard to whether they believe that is a restriction that is necessary or not, and if it's necessary, why? And then take it from there.
agreed. Could be a road width issue. I don't know, these codes were written long before I got here.
Yes.
so.
I mean, this was added in 2002, so this has been, been in the book for 17 years.
So we can't pass the handicap sign until the no parking is taken care of?
Yes.
That's unfortunate for the person. I mean, I understand, but that's still unfortunate.
Okay. I guess we should start talking to these folks you just mentioned, right? And see if we're interested in changing that. Otherwise, there's really no way we can put a handicap spot there as it stands now. All right, Rita, do you want to do the legwork, or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll talk to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know who you're going to talk to?
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody.
I mean, it's like Andrea said, it's unfortunate. The guy has been, for months, been trying to get something done about this, and we've been going back and forth.
And can this just be left on the table so that Rita doesn't have to go through a or communication? Just
Right,
keep that handicap in?
we'll table it till next month, that's all. Any other discussion about that? And moving right on down to the traffic safety campaign.
So it kind of segues because hopefully some of these issues that we just addressed would be addressed, or we talked about would be addressed through this. So, as you know, I think all of you were there on May 13th. Do you want to come up or are you? I've been working with a few different departments and boards on this. But this is just an outline. There's nothing that I'm proposing today. There's nothing that I have a resolution or we're, presenting any policy today. I just wanted to keep everybody in the know. So we hosted the Traffic Safety Forum with the hope of gathering the public's input regarding ongoing traffic issues throughout the city. The intention was for it to be a starting point for more conversation and hopeful potential solutions. So, after follow-ups that I did with different departments and boards and some individual research, we would like to propose an approach to traffic safety called the 3 E's. So the 3 E's stand for engineering, education, and enforcement. It's a big picture approach that takes into consideration many solutions to different issues. It considers not only vehicular traffic, but pedestrian and bicycle traffic and bus safety. The hope is to use this approach to kind of clean up the rough edges around the problems that we see on a regular basis, to get process moving in a more forward-thinking path, and to get as many folks as possible, both city employees and public, wrapped into the conversation about concerns and solutions. So engineering first. So currently, our process, as we know, because we just went through it, is to bring a concern to the Public Safety Committee for the council to consider, followed by a recommendation to the full council. And what we would like to propose is an additional step of analysis by the city engineer. So every concern brought forward would receive a number. So if Rita brings a concern, it's number 1. Jeffrey brings a concern, it's number 2. It falls on the desk of our city engineer. He does an analysis study on each one. I say he because it's currently John. He would do a study on each one with a recommendation and then an explanation of that recommendation or non-recommendation to this committee. So it just adds a step that gives this committee a little bit more knowledge behind their ultimate decisions. So as of right now, the policy is still a work in progress. It's being considered by John, our engineer. DPW has looked at it, Corp Council has looked at it a little bit, so we're still working on it. I don't have it ready to present, but I just wanted to give you a heads up in case you have some input. So some of the things that we're considering is how council will keep track of this, because we are, the front line to the public usually. So if a constituent calls me and has this, I send it into the engineer, I still want to know what's going on. And the timeline, so say if John has 50 items on his list there, so I can kind of give the constituent that. So that to me is important, that we're still involved so that we can keep our constituents, aware. What the recommendation would look like. Do we want to do like a form so that he just checks, yes, I recommend, no, I don't recommend, plus the reason why, how simple, what exactly we want. If that comes to us, if it comes to the constituent, if it goes to both, So a lot of those details aren't ironed out, and I'm hoping to get feedback from folks, maybe not today, but just to start thinking about. And other things that we talked about were like, would the analysis be the same for regulatory and non-regulatory signs? So stop signs versus like a yellow and black sign that it doesn't have any legal ramification behind it. So that's the engineering aspect of it. It just kind of changes our policy a little bit by adding a step for analysis. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Well, it's basically closing the loophole we just encountered. So if this had gone to engineering, we would have known in advance that the code needed to be amended before this came up for
Right.
committee.
Right.
I
And
like
it's
that.
just, it gives somebody who knows a little bit, has the information,
Yeah.
and then brings it to
And
us.
what is the number list you said, like, I
Well, I
read
mean,
something
that's
we want
just-
to, is that in order of priority, or would that be first come, first
Yeah,
served?
so that's another thing that we wouldn't know, because so you say you have number one and two, and 2 was super easy to do. It's a handicap sign, it's a no-brainer. And 1 is super complicated, it'll take him a couple hours. I would imagine that he would have some liberty to say, I have 10 minutes, let me do this one. And I don't know if that's something that we would design. He would come up with his own design for that, but I would imagine that he would say, okay, I have an hour to work on this. These are the numbers, but kind of try and keep it in line so that, things don't just sneak in there and things get forgotten. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for, and I would imagine you would see. But like I said, this is a work in progress, and
Well, so this is basically going to be a continuation of what you've been doing. You want to have some more public meetings?
well, not for this one. So for engineering, that's right now what I'm looking at. Like, this is just kind of roughing up the edges that we have. So for that, the education, which would be the next leg, and I said this at Laws and Rules, so I'm a little redundant, but there's so many ways of educating people, and of course people learn differently.
Well, I guess
So-
that's my question. How do you
educate?
propose to get the education out there?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm completely open for suggestions on this one. The traffic safety forum was I thought went well. There were a decent amount of people, but considering how many people in the city, it's still a very small percentage. So one thing John, our engineer, did say he would like to come next month, if that's okay with you, to kind of speak about a little bit of, what goes on in the mind of that with his considerations in this policy that I just talked about. So that would help a little bit. Other ideas are maybe potential collaborations with the media. Get the word out and get out there. Specific social media campaigns, if there's anything specific that we want to host. I meant to get his name, I can't think of it. He did a lot of complete street work in Poughkeepsie. He has offered to come in, and whether we want that to be a council thing or a public thing, we can talk about that. So that one's kind of the one where I have it's a little more open-ended, just because I think there's 1,000 things that we could potentially do. But my first suggestion was to have John come in, because then we could talk about the policy too more with him. So I was gonna okay it with you, and if you're okay with John coming in to speak with us
Sure,
next
I
time.
have no problem.
Okay. Then I'll confirm that with him next week,
All right.
or after this meeting sometime. And then the third leg is the enforcement, and I've had a few meetings with the police chief, Chief Tinty, because establishing policy, educating folks, and then approaching our traffic infrastructure can only strengthen the law if we have law enforced. And as you probably all know, it's hard for our officers to get out there and enforce the traffic safety concerns that we hear often from constituents. And at the Traffic Safety Forum, a lot of it was based on enforcement. A lot of the comments were talking about enforcement. So what we're considering is doing a short window of time that will be advertised. We will focus on traffic safety for these 2 weeks or whatever we determine it to be. It will be advertised so that people, aren't feel like they're being targeted. So we have to just make sure we get the word out there. But it would be dedicated to specific traffic issues like speeding and texting while driving, and the officers will just know to hopefully, look for that and pull people over. And we can talk about, how we want that enforced. But that's another thing. The ball is starting to roll with those 3 things.
All right. Anybody, any questions?
I like the 3 E's. Has a good ring to it.
I did not come up with that. That's a thing that is out there. I take 0 credit. I started at the forum. Somebody mentioned at the end the Vision 0. So I was looking at that, which is a lot of good things. I don't know. Did you research any of that? The Vision 0. There's a lot of really good things about that. The idea is you want 0. I can't remember if it's 0 fatalities or just 0 crashes. That's the vision, is to get there. So it's a little bit more detailed stuff. Like this is abroad, and we could, change it and see what works. Like I don't think any of this will do. I guess now I've said 3 times. It just kind of cleans up rough edges that I think we have, and starts a small step towards hopefully something bigger.
Yes, it might be a little out of context. Maybe it's just an overarching question. And I know, Randy, this is something that you've talked about a number of times, and that is there any plan, hope, or discussion of just outright reducing the speed limit in the city?
Yes. You'll be getting a communication next
Good.
month.
Okay. Good,
All right.
thank you.
Anybody else? This kind of sounds like a blank slate that we can start filling in some stuff, right?
Right, yeah, and like I said, I wanted to just come to everybody just so, feel free, anybody, to give me feedback, reach out to me, and as soon as I get things going, I'll bring them forward.
Okay.
Maybe I'll set up John coming for next Monday.
All right, very good. Actually, I do have a topic for that. I just heard from somebody was not aware that pedestrians have the right of way in a crosswalk. So
Right, there's,
it
Part
might
of
be
the
a good idea to
education.
get stuff
Well,
like
I
that
think
out
that's
there,
what,
because
like,
people do walk it, they don't even look sometimes, they figure they're safe in that crosswalk.
Yeah.
People in cars don't always realize that that's,
yeah.
they don't know they have to stop. They're coming at a pretty good rate of speed, and all of a sudden somebody just walks out without even looking.
So I've had at least 3
Yeah.
close calls with that.
I mean,
Where I'm still
As
in
a-
the middle
as a
of the
pedestrian,
crosswalk.
or-
Yeah, where I'm still in the middle of the crosswalk and somebody would turn without looking.
right,
Mm.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
it's an issue out there, and actually, somebody in my family was hit in a crosswalk a couple of years ago. And this person didn't know they had to stop for somebody in a crosswalk.
Yeah.
So, it's a,
They have a license.
what?
Then they have a license.
Well, that's
She
why,
did have a
like,
license.
one of the things with the enforcement, I know there's, some issues with that, but there's probably a lot of people who just don't know. So if
Right.
you get stopped and you're told, then people will stop doing it. I know that doesn't stop everybody from doing it. If you're gonna speed, I'm not completely naive, but only slightly naive. But yeah, like if somebody gets stopped for doing that, then they're probably not gonna do it again if they
Yeah.
didn't know that that was a law.
Well, and on both sides too, pedestrians should know that there are people out there that don't know they have
Right.
to stop. So,
Right.
if you look out, you're not even turning your head, you're putting your life at.
You have to be a
risk
defensive
there.
walker.
What?
I say you have to be a defensive walker. You might have the right of way, but that doesn't mean that somebody else is going to know
Right,
that.
don't mean you can't be dead.
Dead or right.
Right.
Yeah, so anybody has any ideas on specifics for education and, what do you think that should look like? All ears, and I'm happy to make it happen. No.
Okay.
I think one thing would be to, if we could raise the money to have some kind of piece of mail that goes out to everybody in the city. Because I think a lot of this comes down to people who are driving too fast and they're not looking when they make turns. So if we could send out, a clear piece of mail, really asking people, because that's the other thing, is most of the research shows that people who speed are the people who live in the neighborhood. So it's us who's doing it. And a lot of times people say, oh, it's somebody, driving through out of town. But it's usually 90 to 95% of people who speed are the people in the neighborhood. So I think some discussion, some kind of mailer, flyer, letting people know would be a good idea.
Put the flyers in the middle of the crosswalk.
Maybe do a survey too.
Yeah.
Asking people, since you say it's most of us, asking the neighborhood people, what are their traffic issues, and or maybe put out a list and asking people to, 1 to 5, what is the greatest danger, or what do you see needs to be done?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Talk to someone
I think that's a
about
good
it.
idea, yeah. Because that also has the effect of also raising the awareness of folks. But we know it's not Jeffrey.
Not gonna be me either for the next 6 months. That bus is free.
All right, thank you, and I'll just keep you all informed.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like kind of an organic kind of thing that's
Yeah,
going to grow. And,
That's kind of how I work. We all haven't figured that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Okay, let's see. We are going to the 2-hour parking sign right now. Rita, you want to start that? I also talked to the person involved, but
Did you?
if you want to, you wrote the communication.
Well, I guess the first thing we wanted to know, apparently there were signs up there initially, and then they were taken down. And to their surprise, they didn't know why the signs were removed. I couldn't tell her why they were removed either.
I forgot to ask,
And
I
why
probably
were they-
did ask her, but I can't remember when they were removed, like some kind of time frame.
I'd go
but I
back,
can't
why were they
remember.
there?
Well, it's a
Um,
dentist,
I
it's a
think they were
practice
there
up
for
there. It
this-
was
for
for
this
that
reason,
business,
right?
for that reason, because they had 2-hour parking signs there for their customers. And they said there is also a handicap parking sign out there. However, anybody can use it. It's not specifically for them.
Right.
And so, because their 2-hour signs were taken down, she told me that they're losing business.
But there are lots of businesses along Fair Street. Lawyers, doctors, whatever.
Mhm.
Why should one business be entitled to you can't park here for 2 hours?
Well, I don't think that it was about entitlement. It was that they had them up there,
Oh, I
and
see.
then they were taken down.
As far as I'm aware, we can find no
No.
legislation that was put forth to put them up initially.
How about to take them down,
Well, you can't issue, there was nothing issued about them, period.
period?
So I think they were
So-
taken down because there was no
No.
initial legislation set forth.
But do you know how long they were up
I
before
think
they were taken
put in
down?
place, back in Tiles era.
Yeah, 2012 on Google Earth, they
Right,
were
so
up there,
that's-
so.
So they were, when they were taken down, did anyone let them know that they were going to be taken down, or?
I think that was something to do with parking enforcement. That was found that there was no legislation.
Generally what happens is someone gets a ticket for violating the 2-hour parking. They go to city court, they contest the ticket. The judge looks at the schedule and says, it's not supposed to be there.
From 2012?
Yep. If the sign is up and there isn't a section of the code that authorizes it, it has to come down. But that's generally how we find out about, these signs that mysteriously appeared however long ago, is when someone contests the ticket and it it turns out that it wasn't authorized in the first place.
Okay, so then we would have to do some legislation to put the signs back up.
Yeah.
And getting back to what we're talking about with Andrea is, you know, we're gonna kind of tighten that grip up on this so that there are no more handshake deals kind of
Right,
as far as getting signs put up wherever. You know, if we kind of get a noose on that and say, okay, it's got to go through engineering first. It can be brought to you, you guys then give it to me or engineering directly, they sign off on it, yes or no,
right.
and then we apply. So, you know, it's in the books, it's all above board. Transparency, there's no other issues. Everybody's on the same page.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to give her her signs back, only because she had them,
Okay,
and then they were taken from her,
all right.
through no fault of their own.
Right, but we also cannot.
Yeah, I understand, I understand that, I understand
We
that.
don't know how they got there, but,
Can't put them back.
So at this point, could Rita propose legislation to make it 2-hour parking along that whole block? Is that?
yeah.
About a year ago, the mayor talked about a parking management system, and it didn't really come to much except for adding a fee for the parking lots, but a true parking management system addresses this sort of thing in a citywide comprehensive approach, and it's a really important thing for a city to have, a parking management system. The idea is to keep 1 or 2 spots open at all times on blocks that need it. So for instance, we shouldn't be having metered parking in much of Midtown because there's not a parking problem. So why are we paying to go inside of businesses where there's plenty of parking open? A good parking management system has different prices for different times of the day, different prices for different areas. It's supposed to be moving parking around. There's different, Donald Shoup, I highly recommend looking at what he has written. I'm gonna send it to all the other people, this Donald Shoup cheat sheet, because that sort of thing where on Fair Street, where there are businesses during certain hours that need spaces and they don't have them, they need the traffic to move around, we need a comprehensive sort of approach to this. It's the same kind of thing as just throwing up a speed bump. If you just throw it up and you're not looking at the whole system as a whole, parking is just as important for a city. And right now, we do not have a parking management system.
And I really don't think this is, to me, it doesn't seem any different than, we had a big discussion about people
Yeah,
downtown
downtown.
requesting a loading zone. This is really no different than that. And I think, you know, what Ed is saying, we probably should, we do that with the loading zones, you know. We get input from safety, DPW, we get a lot of input on it. You know, we don't just sit here and make a decision, and as you said, you know, we're gonna be opening up a can of worms
Well,
with
I
this.
don't know if we would be opening up a can of worms, because this was already in place.
Well, it was in place
And-
without,
However, how many did you receive, how many people came to you with safety concerns or with issues about that 2-hour parking sign being there? From what I'm understanding is the only signs just recently came down from 2012 because someone may have gotten a parking ticket or
yeah.
challenged the
Who
code.
knows,
So
right?
prior to that,
It was over here.
just to your point of it's opening up a can of worms,
Yeah.
I don't see that
I mean, if
because
they're
it was
there-
done already.
Then they're essentially taking away 2 parking spaces from people who would probably work uptown somewhere. Because you can't park there if it's only 2 hours. So that effectively takes 2 parking spaces away from places where parking is highly needed. So I can't see any reason why we would want to put those 2-hour parking spaces back. It's a can of worms. And then every other lawyer and every other doctor and
Right, I
every
think
other
what he's
dentist
saying
is gonna
once
want
we
the
do
same
that,
thing.
Exactly, every other business that's run out of on Fair and Wall, you know, are they gonna come then and want 2-hour parking for their neighborhood? And then all of a sudden, you're not gonna have parking for people that live there.
You can also circle it back to Andrea's, suggestion and the Van Dusen Street issue, which is that if you're gonna start moving in the direction where these types of decisions are only made after, the department heads chime in, And that's what we said that, you do about, with Van Dusen Street, you check with the engineer, you check with DPW, you check with the PD. And that is consistent with what, the committee is recommending holistically. Then, I would suggest you just do the same thing with Fair Street, and you ask the engineer, and you ask, PD, and you ask DPW whether or not they have any opinion about this one way or another. You get more information, it comes back, and you consider them in that context, because I don't know what the impact of, that 2-hour parking was on Fair Street. I don't know, how much it was or wasn't enforced. I don't know how many people used it. The people who know that are PD, the engineer, and,
And the
DPW.
business that requested it initially.
Yeah, but it's been down for a while. I mean, it didn't come down recently. It's been down, I believe, over a year.
I don't think so.
Well, that's what the parking enforcement people who were there when it came down, informed us. So I wasn't there, so I don't know, but that's some people who were say it's been down for a long time.
I mean, I would feel more comfortable, at least if we got a couple other opinions from one of Ed's staff, engineering, KPD, see, just see what they think. I really think we have to develop a procedure. We can't just kind of do what we want to do here every month. But, I do think, the parking spot downtown, Ed and I went to every business down there and asked an opinion on what they thought about it, Not that we have to get into that kind of thing, but, a few other opinions certainly wouldn't hurt any. Anybody else?
You just said the parking spot downtown. Are you talking about the 15-minute parking only in front of the liquor store that's on Broadway?
No, this is for
No.
the visitor center.
In front of the visitor center?
But we gave
It's
the
off to
visitor
side.
center one parking spot. They asked for two. We gave them one,
Right.
In
right?
the parking lot, though.
In the
But
parking
there is a
When's the
15-minute
sun going up?
parking only sign
It's
in front,
probably
and
this
the
week.
meter is
Painting
geared
this week
specifically
down
to
there.
15 minutes only outside the liquor store on Broadway, which
2
is
days
now Kingston Wine Co.
Right.
It was installed with the original liquor store, and there's a lot of parking need down there. And that store is able to have 15-minute parking
Yeah.
and a sign
I don't,
and a meter.
I don't remember legislation for that, to be honest. I know it's there, but I don't remember, and I think that's since my term in office that appeared.
That's your.
But I don't know,
yeah.
I don't know how it got there. I don't remember that.
Rita was also surprised in your letter that apparently the practice is losing patience because there's no place to park. There's a huge parking lot in back of that building. Off-street parking,
We're Pine Street Pediatrics. We,
Sorry?
where?
In back
Fair
of,
Street?
in back of 185, what's the address here?
There's two.
185 Fair Street.
The address is 190
The
Fair Street.
190 is the actual doctor's office.
It says 185 Fair Street.
Yeah, that's for the no parking signs, but the actual practice is
Oh,
at
right, they
190.
they were across the street, but it's for the doctor's business at 185, and there's a lot of space, off-street parking in the back of that building. I'm surprised they were saying we're losing patients, because there's no patients,
Well,
physical patients.
This is what they said.
Yeah, because there's lots of parking in the back, and I wouldn't buy that today, it was empty, lots of spaces.
All right, so where is this?
'Cause they
right now?
lost all their
And-
patients.
Is this not going to happen? Where are we with this, so I know what to tell them? That because it was in the code, the signs came down. There was no initial legislation for it, so the signs came down.
Right,
And-
until the council
Yeah.
moves forward
I mean, I
to
know that.
give legislation, I can't put it back.
Which sounds like I'm hearing the council doesn't want to do that.
Well, no, if you talk to DPW, talk to Diane Berquist, talk to some of the folks on that street. So, if it turns out everybody on that street wants 2-hour parking, that would, That would be a big piece of information too.
I don't think everybody on the street wants 2-hour parking.
Except for the one business?
Yeah, they're the only ones that came to me.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any recommendations, comments, what we want to do here? I mean, certainly, as I said, I would feel more comfortable if we had a couple other opinions on this. And I think that's the direction we're heading, and we want to get opinions on it, on situations. It's not just a regular handicap parking sign, which we don't really need a lot of input. This is going to impact a lot of people on the street, I think. You know, pros or cons, it's going to in fact impact these people if we say no, and if we put it in, it's going to impact other people.
Is there anything in this code that says we can't put it on Fair Street?
It says we can't.
That says we can.
Forgive me, I just want to know what the impact, because they were there for 5 years. So I feel like we're bringing up a new issue that hasn't happened.
Well, it could be, because I don't know, it's not my ward. Has anybody gotten complaints about a two-hour parking there?
I haven't heard anything other than why were the signs taken down? They had been
Are we
there.
talking about doing the entire block in 2-hour parking, or just like
No,
one
I think
spot? or-
one spot. One
They're-
spot.
They're requesting one spot, 2-hour parking. And I told her, even if we did it, there's no guarantee that's gonna be there for
It's open to everyone.
for her customers.
True, it is,
Anybody
right?
can park there for 2 hours. It's not gonna be
Yeah,
reserved.
It's just like the
much
handicap
like
sign
the
that was there.
handicap sign.
Yes.
Somebody can come from Minnesota, park there as long as they have a
Right.
handicap, and then they can walk to uptown if they want to, and there's nothing that can be done.
Right.
So 2-hour parking, I mean, it would have to be specific to the property. And there's already in front of the property is the handicap parking.
So the signs that came down were not specific to her business?
I don't know, I don't believe so. I
They
think
weren't?
The whole opposite side of the road, I think there was 3 or 4 signs on the whole opposite side of the road.
I think it's just a 2-hour parking. There was certainly nothing about the business around.
But that seemed to work for them, apparently, right?
Right.
That's what she said, yeah.
She should get the other businesses together to campaign for it.
What if put meters out there? I mean, what, you know,
That would guarantee turnover.
Anybody else have anything to add to this? All right, where do we want to head with this? Suggestion?
Well, I don't know if there's any action that can be taken.
Well, the
Well,
action
the
would
action,
be to
somebody
wait
can
for
make,
it.
somebody can make a
Legislation.
motion.
I make a
Rita-
motion that we
Rita
put the
can-
2-hour signs
Rita
back
can
up
ask
there.
other department heads what they think about it. That's another possibility. We can table it pending the outcome of that. What, Dan?
You can formally refer it to, the various departments for a recommendation.
Right.
much as.
I mean, that's my area of comfort right here. I mean,
I'll buy that.
I understand her situation. We can table it to
Would there
there.
be any objection to putting paid meters out there, extending those at one block?
I'm sure there would be objection to that.
Yeah, you go from free parking, go from free parking to paying, there would be an objection.
2-hour parking out of every other one.
I think one of the problems here, that these, and I would too, they've probably gotten into a comfort zone that they got this spot out here, now all of a sudden their customers are gonna have to pay for parking.
Somebody put them up without legislation.
Right.
Yeah, that was done. We had to take them down due to legality, right? They
By the
can't,
code, they can't be there.
they can't be there, they can't be enforced. So with that being said, they come down, so that we move forward. What we do when we move forward, you can put forth, we'll investigate, we will look into it. If it makes sense, we'll put them up.
Well, we would then have to get the legislation to.
Right.
So what do you want to put forward the legislation, or do you want to talk to some other people before?
I want them to have their signs back.
So you could make a motion right now on the
I
resolution.
did, I made a
and-
motion that we propose legislation so they can have their signs.
Yeah, there's a motion on the table, we're discussing. So does anybody want to second the motion?
No.
Our motion is to put the signs back. But we can't,
Well, the problem is there's actually no back, because there was no legislation in
well,
the
we
first
have
place.
to enact legislation to put a 2-hour parking
Right.
That's the
zone right there. That's what her motion is, not to put the original signs back.
At 185 Fair Street, that one spot, correct? Not the whole block?
190, right? I think it's,
Well,
No,
190 is
190 has a
the actual
handicap.
building of the
185
doctor.
Fair
It has to
Street.
be across the street,
Yes.
because 190 is the doctor, but there's a handicap sign in front.
What if we did away with the handicap and put a 2-hour parking right in front of the doctor's office? It's still no guarantee that the patients will get that, but at least
But
it'll
that,
keep
at least that's a
traffic moving.
compromise, yes. That's-
So you would have to post legislation to remove the handicap parking from that area, and then,
Well, let me talk to
I'll
them.
talk to
Let me-
engineer
Let me talk
first.
to them
Yeah.
first, okay?
Do we know where the handicap, I mean, who
yeah,
owns the
perhaps,
handicapped and whether the person is still?
yeah, perhaps the
Yeah,
handicap
they may
might
not even need
be-
it now.
You
That's
know.
what I always wondered is how, because some people they move or they don't need the handicap parking anymore. How, like,
Well, it ties back to managing this entire
Somebody-
process, like Tanya indicated, like, you know, the committee is indicating. I mean, there
Right.
has to be a better handle on all of this.
right? Yeah, no, because I've asked for removal of handicap signs that have been up for 2 years unneeded. So it's just, but it's, yeah.
And I prosecute all of these. I mean, every one of them, the parking tickets, the moving violations, the non-moving violations. I'm the one in city court in front of the judge on all of them. You know, so, I mean, the level of confusion is, you know, sky high.
Well, maybe we consider a parking manager, maintenance, whatever. Anyway, I was curious.
So, let me find out about this handicap sign that's up there and if,
You want me to do a little legwork and talk to
Yeah,
some department
sure.
heads?
yeah.
And so we'll table
And I'll
this.
talk to, the business up there
Right.
and see if they would
yeah.
possibly
in
go
lieu of
for
the
removing
handicap,
one to
maybe-
put another one
Right,
in. It's a
right.
nice compromise.
Yeah,
Maybe
again,
are there
it's
other
no guarantee,
businesses
but
there, maybe?
it'll at least keep traffic moving
Right.
frequently.
Right.
Maybe finding out what the other businesses feel too, around there.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know, probably three years ago, we had a big push to eliminate some of the handicap sign. So some of us, and myself included, I was riding around, finding them and knocking on the door, and just said,
Yeah.
is this still required here?
Yeah.
And I got about 3 people that, they didn't even know what I was talking about. They didn't know why it was there.
Yeah.
They weren't handicapped, so, you know, we eliminated quite a few. That might be one of them that's been there for a while and not even needed anymore.
So a handicap sign stays up until somebody else moves into the house and requests for it to be removed?
Well, I
And if
mean,
they
you could-
don't, it stays there?
You could also, if for some
Well-
reason you don't need the handicap sign anymore, you could also do it. You just have to put it, you have to let your council
Right, but
member
there, I have a
know.
couple on my street. The person, actually died and the handicap sign is still up there.
Right.
Yeah,
Then they're not requesting to have it removed.
somebody,
So somebody would have to move
So
into
that's
that
Jeffrey's
house and
question.
request
Yeah.
it?
His question
well,
is
not
how do
even
you
moving
get
in,
them
it can be a
removed?
neighbor. I just had
If
one
they're
of
no longer
my,
needed.
one of my neighbors died 2 months ago. I swear within a week, I got a call from somebody asking to take his handicap parking sign.
Because he wanted to park there.
'Cause they wanted to take
When
one
I
of
also,
the
I
parking.
had that happen where it was on Hone Street and it was just there for a long time, so somebody had given me a heads up, but it wasn't that person,
Mm.
just another neighbor, and so I actually went to the house, and it was a 2-family house, and just knocked on the doors, and like, do you need, is this for a handicap sign? And they said no, I'm like, and they actually wanted it gone anyway, so it ended up working out, but I mean, that's a lot of legwork to do, and
Right, but there is no process for it to come down
right now I don't think people know.
if somebody
They
doesn't
would,
need it?
a lot of people wouldn't know what to do. They're like, oh, I have a handicap sign here. I don't know if, like,
There
your
was
call.
a suggestion a number of years back, like Steve mentioned, that we do periodic inventories of the handicap spots to, you know, just ascertain
Actually, we
whether or not they're
did.
necessary.
We all got a long list, a very long list.
Right. I mean, that's the only way to do it, is to periodically, monitor them and
Or-
see if they're still necessary and then adopt.
Could we change the code to require people to renew it after, I don't know, 10 years, and if they don't renew it, we remove it?
I'd have to look into that. I think that under the VTO, you designated handicap, I don't think you can designate a handicap for a specific period of time.
And we'd still be the one that would have to monitor
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, I think from a practical matter, the neighbor's gonna let you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
pretty
that's
much.
usually what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless there's a new resident who's using the spot, and then the neighbors know that as well.
All right, so we will table that till next month.
Okay.
And we have some old business. Last month, I'll refresh your memory just a tad. There was an item on the agenda about a memorializing resolution about the dance camera project. We tabled it so that I could get a hold of somebody. Nobody was here to talk about it. So now we do. There he is over here. Come on up, Andrew.
Oh, we got the resolution already.
Thanks, Alder folks, appreciate it. I'm gonna pass around a couple of things, the project. My name's Andrew Pizzullo. I live here in town. I have a house on Fair Street with my partner Soph. I work mostly in state energy policy and climate policy for Food and Water Watch. So these are just a couple, there are three examples of memorializing resolutions passed in opposition to the dance scammer from the village of New Paltz, from the city of Beacon, and from the city of Newburgh as well. And there are 2 copies of each, so I can pass those around.
Do we have both, all of them?
You have all that? Okay, great.
We have all of them?
And then the second thing I have is 2 copies, which I can certainly make, pass along, but I didn't want to make too many copies of just background information on the dance camera energy project expansion. And I'm going to set a timer for myself so I don't take much of your time. So there's a proposal to turn a little used peaker plant, fracked gas facility on the Hudson River into a baseload generating fracked gas facility that will move from peaker plant to a baseload facility. So from 3% use only in times of high energy needs to a facility that runs 100% of the time. There are, in my opinion, no good reasons for this plant. I'll outline just a couple of the most prescient reasons why I feel like this is a raw deal for the Hudson Valley, for the city of Newburgh, for our 4 counties adjacent to the plant, as well as for the communities where the gas is fracked. So one, it's bad for our neighbors. I don't know if you've been following the news, but there is now incontrovertible evidence that fracked gas and the fracking of the shale projects in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Florida and other parts of the United States are tied to neurological disorder, degenerative disorders, and now rare childhood bone cancer. There were, I think, 30 instances right in Pennsylvania of a cancer that basically people don't see at all. So it's bad for the folks who are doing the hydraulic fracturing. It's bad for the city of Newburgh. This plant is 2 miles from downtown city of Newburgh. This is a community that already has a massive toxic load stemming from a legacy of military and corporate polluting. They have a PFAS and PFOA water crisis, and they don't serve to gain anything from this new plant. 2, it's bad for us. We are in the pollution airshed of this facility. We're within 50 kilometers of the facility, so the 44 million pounds of pollutants that will be released from this plant yearly from here until the end of its permitted life in 2057 will blow in our direction as well as across to our neighbors in Dutchess. It's also bad for our pocketbooks. We will see, utility ratepayers here in Kingston, Central Hudson folks will be paying for the construction of this plant in the form of subsidies called capacity payments. We'll expect to see our bills go up by as much as 10% to pay for the construction of this facility. 3, it's bad for the river. It's feet from the edge of the river. The site was flooded in 2012 in Superstorm Sandy. The existing peaker plant was essentially nearly dismantled and sold for scraps because the water was waist high, and they're planning to build in the exact same spot. And 4, we absolutely don't need it. The NYISO, the New York Independent System Operator, has released a report in 15, 16, 17, and a new report is coming out this year that says that this plant is unnecessary to meet current energy demand and projected increases in the next 15 years in New York State. And that instead what we badly need in terms of investment in energy is transmission capacity and battery storage. Those are both potential opportunities for this site. I guess that's really all I have. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer anything. If not, effectively, this goes through the Article 10 siting process. So this is a state-level permitting process determined by the Public Service Commission and the governor. You, as elected officials, have an important role to play in that, including a neighboring municipality. I think it is 9 municipalities have passed resolutions in opposition to the dance scammer at this point. Cold Spring, Phillipstown, Beacon has a majority of folks that haven't passed a resolution yet. Newburgh, New Paltz Village and Town, Saugerties is planning on passing a resolution at their next board meeting. So if you have any questions.
Is this your first time coming to the city of Kingston asking for this, or have you come in the past?
On this particular issue? No, I spoke with the mayor about it about maybe a month and a half ago. I believe he passed along an elected official sign-on letter, which maybe some folks have signed, which goes directly to the governor and the Public Service Commission, asking them to use their authority to oppose it. But this is the first time, and I don't know where you are, if you have a resolution or not, but I wasn't at the last meeting when you discussed it. So.
Is there a copy of the resolution?
We have the 3 that he mentioned, out of New Paltz, Newburgh, and what was
Beacon?
the third?
Beacon, yeah.
I don't know if we have the beacon.
I didn't see the.
I'm happy to send you whichever town you like.
New Paltz,
Now, what
Newburgh.
if we are of a mind to do that? The one that seems the most straightforward to me is the one from the village of New Paltz. That's pretty straightforward. We just have to change New Paltz to Kingston.
Andrew, do you know how they get the gas to the plant?
So, train. So the site, the train effectively runs directly through the site, and so liquefied natural gas is, transmitted on bomb trains, as well as there is a hookup that runs through Orange County. I can't remember what the pipeline is called, but there is an existing gas hookup to this peaker plant facility.
Mm-hmm.
And that gas line comes directly from Pennsylvania, so not from Canada. So it's not coming north-south. It's coming.
So the gas would not be delivered through Kingston.
The gas will not be delivered through Kingston. No, it will come through Orange County.
Do I have any further questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
You have very articulately, and I appreciate that, given a lot of arguments that speak against this, and you preface it by saying, in my opinion, and I respect it. because you've done your homework, you've done a lot. However, I think there's another side to this. There are people who are proponents of this and are putting money behind it. And I don't think I could sign such a resolution such as this, without hearing the other side of this. You know, there are many good reasons why we may need this. And I'm not judging one way or the other right now.
Mhm.
But there are many reasons we need, you say we don't need it, others will say we do, and it could be argumentative, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure I want to place my name on this on the basis of hearing only one side of the story.
Sure.
So I think we need to hear, if we're going to seriously consider this, I think we ought to invite other people in, maybe I'm not sure who that would be, but call them, quote, the developers or the people who are proposing this, and maybe a hearing or something, but I just don't want to knee-jerk sign, memorializing resolution on the basis of one opinion, as much as you've researched it, and I do respect it.
Yeah, can I speak?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, so here are the arguments for the plan. 30 jobs. 25 of those jobs already exist in the Peaker facility, so 5 new jobs in the town of Newburgh. And $30 million in property taxes for the town of Marlborough. I definitely consider those to be legitimate reasons to support the plant. I am happy to, I think probably the only folks that you would be able to get in contact with, who would come and sort of, overwhelmingly support this is Dan Scammer LLC themselves, which they have been doing some public hearings downstate, so I would recommend you reach out to them. But I'm also happy to, if there is anything, obviously I laid out a number of what seem like opinions, but behind those opinions are...
With due respect, you as an opponent are presenting the proponent's arguments. And I'm not sure how valid that is.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're actual, that's what they say.
I'm an environmentalist, it's probably more than the average person, I think, just by my own experience, which I won't go into, and things I've done myself. So I don't take this stuff lightly, okay? I mean, there are many unanswered questions here about the environmental aspects. Do we need it? Do we not need it? There are arguments on both sides of this. Some will argument with the Buchanan nuclear plant going down. Do we need it? Well, I don't know. I'm not so quick.
Sure.
Can I just jump in and ask a question? But is there a timeline where, is this a rush that we need to get this in to, so to speak, stop it, or there's plenty of time for everybody to do homework on this?
Yeah.
They only have a proposal, right?
Yeah, they have not even really. They have a public scoping statement out, and their proposal, I believe, is expected to drop September 1st. So.
And
then it's an 18-month
writing a resolution
process.
specifically for Kingston instead of just
If
crossing off.
we want to do that, that's fine.
And then it will give anybody who wants to do more research the time. If there's not a rush job, everybody will feel secure with their vote.
Yeah, and please don't hesitate to reach out. I am happy to formally present on the proposal with a PowerPoint and a bunch of statistics. But thanks for the consideration.
Thanks for coming by.
So do we want to table this again?
Yeah.
Do we want to
move on
invite
it.
somebody?
We don't have a resolution.
Yeah, there's not a resolution.
I don't see how we can move on.
Well, we
either.
can make up the resolution. That's the least of our worries, coming up with a resolution. Coming up with a judgment here to do it, is the problem. I don't feel everybody's jumping on board here.
No.
So
Well, just for
everybody
full
wants-
disclosure, I already put my name behind it. I signed the letter that also the mayor signed and a lot of other, Dave Donaldson and others,
Yeah, I mean,
county officials.
I certainly don't think it's a good idea, this. My only issue is, I hate to weigh in with someone else's economy. It's not, if it was in Kingston, it'd be a no-brainer, I would think, but, you know, we're talking about.
Have we found, what about the constituents in Newburgh? How, have you guys done any surveys or anything? What are they feeling about
We
this?
have now 3,000 petitions in opposition to the dance camera in New York 18. That's probably about 750 in the city of Newburgh. So.
Right, and so you're just asking our support to support them in their opposition.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to, you know, again, because this is a state level permitting process, you know, so everyone followed the glide path, correct? Right, the peaker facility that was supposed to go into the town of Ulster. Maybe not. But it was a fracked gas facility that the town ultimately decided to oppose. The company rescinded the application and instead offered a battery storage facility, which then created an economic environment for 2 new solar farms in the town of Ulster, and you know, probably 10 times the number of jobs that were offered by this, you know, this peaker facility. So I think that the pitch broadly, and why this is a tactic that you know, my organization uses, and we work in coalition with Scenic Hudson and Riverkeeper, Clearwater, Nyberg, Mothers Out Front, and others, is the hope is that we can create an environment in state energy policy that inspires or accelerates the transition to renewables, and you know, forces folks to consider battery storage and transmission, you know, the actual solutions to our energy problems before even the company puts millions of dollars into their proposal. So that's just, you know, I think broadly that's the idea behind the tactic of the municipal resolution.
Okay. You seem like a pretty honest kind of guy. You've probably been to a lot of, you know, public.
I mostly work in Albany, so, but yeah.
How does the crowd seem to you?
You mean here?
And just pick one that you've been to. I'm sure there's been a lot of them, right? Public comments?
On this plant,
Yeah.
or?
I think he's
Yeah.
trying to, he's asking if you see more opposition or more support.
We have public comments here, and people gather and give their opinions. Sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes
Yeah.
75-25, whatever.
I
Are you
think,
able to gauge that at all?
I mean, I would consider, yeah, we have had a lot of, so you see this in the context of CPV and Cricket Valley both being built. I don't know if you know, Competitive Power Ventures is in Wayanda, and Cricket Valley is in Dover. These are both plants that, you know, that NYISO said, okay, maybe we need them to meet our electricity generation in, you know, the short term as we transition to renewables. This plant is not part of that, and I think it's important actually, because we had a lot of, I would say it was 50-50 or maybe even supportive in the Cricket Valley and CPV siting determinations, but Dan Scammer has been both on the ground and with elected officials a pretty resounding opposition, just considering how dangerously it's sited, how close it is to the city of Newburgh, Beacon, Poughkeepsie, and Kingston, and the fact that the state has you know, effectively said we don't necessarily need it. What's really happening is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, created a capacity zone in the lower Hudson Valley, which became a subsidy from ratepayers to pay for electricity generation, and the fastest and most durable return at that particular moment, and still probably to this day, even though solar and renewables are beating natural gas in so many other ways is to put big fossil fuel power plants in. So there's fear, you know, with Indian Point closing that we won't have the electricity generation we need. But anyway, sorry, that's a lot of context. But
I mean, the dance camera plant at one time for years and years and years was a coal burning plant. Now I'm getting technical here, but in switching over to natural gas, be it fracked or non-fracked, but once the natural gas is there, the amount of energy, I'm getting technical here, but the amount of energy in terms of BTU per pound of CO2 emitted is a 233% improvement. Okay, so they're going in the right direction. I'm not going to be so quick to thwart that.
I wish that was true. I truly wish that was true. Methane emissions from the hydraulic fracturing process, methane is 100 times more heat trapping than carbon dioxide is. As an environmentalist, truly, I think basically since we've taken coal burning facilities offline, we have seen more greenhouse gas emissions than we saw from the entire period of the Industrial Revolution to when we ended using coal. And there is a lot of research at this point that effectively says that's because we have transitioned to natural gas. And in the natural, so again, natural gas is breaking gas out of shale, breaking gas, either the traditional way or with hydraulic fracturing. And at every single point in that process, methane is released. Methane is a noxious, gas basically that is 100 times more heat trapping than coal is. So I personally, and I truly, I'm not just saying this because I work in the industry, but I think that natural gas is worse than coal is at this point. And the need to transition as quickly and as possibly in multi-sectors is like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So,
I have an old house which has a coal bin in it, and I'm heating with gas. Maybe I should shut it off and have them deliver coal then.
Heat pumps. You should transition to a heat pump. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm happy to send all the research that we have worked since 2008 on the fracking the fracking issue and done a lot of research about the impact that it's had. Not only in emissions, but also in terms of air pollution.
Well, you present some good arguments, but as I said at the outset, I'd like to hear some of the proponents speak.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So we'll table to see if we can get somebody to present, or we want to do our own research.
I don't want to do our own research. We're not qualified to do that. We're not.
Well, you're qualified to look up other expert opinions. So, all right, we'll see what we can dig up.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. All right. And with that is the end of our.
So moved.
Second.
All